Last time we talked about a little bit about the Ten Commandments, and I will continue with that topic. I will have a little bit of a different angle that I took there the other day. I was quoting the other day Robert Holden. I will be having it quoting this time another author, and actually a theory that is called the broken window theory. And so let's start with that part. It says in 1969, quite a long time ago, Stanford University psychologist Philip Zimbardo conducted an experiment on human nature. He abandoned two similar cars in different neighborhoods, one in the heart of Bronx, New York, and the other in the affluent neighborhood in Palo Alto, California. He removed the license plate, left the hoods open, and recorded what happened. In the Bronx, within 10 minutes of abandonment, people began stealing parts of the alluring car. It took approximately 3 days to strip the car of all valuable parts. Once stripped of economic value, the car then became a source of entertainment. People smashed windows, ripped fabric, and chipped the paint, reducing the car to a pile of junk. In Palo Alto, something different, quite different, happened. Nothing. For more than a week, the car sat unmolested. There was no theft, vandalism, or even a scratch. Puzzled, Zimbardo, in plain view of everyone, took a sledgehammer and smashed parts of the car. Soon, spectators were taking turns with the hammer, delivering blow after satisfying blow. Within a few hours, the vehicle was resting in its roof, demolished. Among the scholars who took note of Zimbardo's experiment were two criminologists, James Q. Wilson and George Kelling. The experiment prompted their now famous broken window theory of crime. Their premise is that if a broken window remains unrepaired, vandals will soon break and Vandals will soon break a building's remaining windows. Why is that? Aside from the fact that it is fun to break windows, says the author, why does a broken window invite further vandalism? Wilson and Kelling hypothesis is the broken window sends a signal that no one is in charge. Breaking more windows costs nothing, and there are no consequences to breaking more windows. The broken window is a metaphor for behavioral norms breakdown in a community. If one person scribbles graffiti on a wall, others will soon be spraying paint. If an aggressive panhandler begins working a street block, others will follow. In short, once people begin disregarding norms that keep order in the community, both order and community loosen. Police in big cities have dramatically reduced crime rates by applying this theory. Rather than concentrating on felonies, they aggressively enforce minor offenses like graffiti, public drinking, panhandling, and littering. This police enforcement sends a signal that broken window behavior has consequence in a city. If you cannot get away with jumping a gate in the subway, you had better not try armed robbery. At this point, you are wondering, what crime in street has to do with software development? writes the author of the article, Gary Peterson. And you might be asking what this has to do with church. The broken window theory plays out in software development organizations daily. I was surprised and shocked about to read that part. Software managers inadvertently send signals that no one is in charge and there are no cause or consequence to ignoring project norms. Before you say, not on my project, or this doesn't apply to my church, you might want to look for more classical broken windows in your organization. Problem arises when managers allow prima donnas to dominate, intimidate, and dictate projects. It is tempting to let a technical superstar take the lead, especially for managers who question their own engineering talent, but they will pay in the end. Once ideas are silent and insults starts flying, team members will opt out on limit their contribution to the project. I've been in projects like this where I've seen some prima donnas there. The prima donna will get overloaded and then the vandalism will begin. Do you cultivate mentors who are inclusive and teach their craft? Or, on the other hand, do you cultivate prima donnas who hide their weaknesses and feed their insecurities? Do you have managers whose directions are clear as mud? Like the opaque window in a bathroom, they appear to shed light on the subject, but in reality, things are not bright or clear. After a while, some engineers enjoy these opaque managers because if directions are not clear, then accountability is not clear. If accountability is not clear, then this project is free for all. So start breaking the windows. Are you blocking the light or letting the sunshine in? Troubles occur when managers exercise their authority by hoarding information or tightening control. Collaboration and initiative are dirty words to these controllers. Everything runs on maximum management sanction and minimum information sharing. Process stalls and engineers revert to what is known as cruise control. Once managers begin disregarding norms that keep order in a project, both order and the project loosen or unravel. Repair the broken windows in your management style and order will return. Amazingly, I think Wilson and Kelling's theory may explain the mystery of software quality, says Gary Peterson. From its first release to present versions, Microsoft Windows, we were talking about that, was released broken. Distributing broken Windows sends a signal that no one is in charge. There are no consequences, and breaking more Windows software, it's okay. Gary Peterson made an excellent correlation between the broken window theory and software quality. I think the same applies to our spiritual life and the life at the church, how we live our life at church, or how we live as Christians. What would be that broken window in our life, in our Christian life? I believe there are certain norms or certain standards that God had given us. And we will come to the conclusion at the end that although these are really good norms, they're not sufficient. And these norms are very simple. If they were sufficient, the Bible would be only of the 10 Commandments. That was all it would be. But since they're not sufficient, there's more to it. We have to read them more carefully, and we have to dig deeper on it and understand them a little bit more. It also has a very basic level of background and understanding of what we are in. So for those who are new, I think is a very good reminder or a good start of the Ten Commandments. Last time I tackled 2 commandments. Basically, it was number 4, or the Sabbath commandment, and number 1. Today I'm going to do the rest if time allows. If not, I'll just finish in another sermon. The second commandment, and I'm going to start in order this time, not from the 4th and then the first one. The second commandment reads, "You shall," I'm not making any reference. I think we all know that Deuteronomy 5 or Exodus 20, you find the scriptures there about the commandments. We are very familiar with that. Second commandment reads, "You shall not make for yourself carved image, any likeness of anything that is in the heavens above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow to them nor serve them." Second commandment. Most people, when they think of this commandment, understandably think that it only prohibits worships to idols and worship to ancient gods such as Roman Jupiter and Greek Zeus. If you want to listen to these, I only have excerpts of this whole thing, but if you want to read what I'm explaining here, you can go on the website and type in Dennis Prager, and he has, for each commandment, he has actually a 20 to 15 minutes documentary on each commandment. So basically, I'm just having excerpts from that part, and I have to give that credit to him, and you will see why later on. Dennis Prager, that's his name. It says, "The irony, however, is that this commandment is not only relevant to modern life, it is in many ways the mother of all the other commandments. Why is it so relevant today?" he asked. "Because today we have as many false gods as the ancients did." It was a little bit shocking to me. "And why is the mother of all the other commandments? Because if we identify false gods and avoid worshiping them, we will eliminate one of the greatest barriers to a good world: false gods. The point of biblical monotheism is that is only one God, and that only this God, the creator of the universe, demands to be worshipped. Nothing more. Why? Why is that? First, because one God means basically one human race. Only if we all have the same creator, we are all brothers and sisters. Second, having the same parent also means that no person or group is intrinsically more valuable than any other group. And third, one God means one moral standard for all people. If God declares murder wrong, it is wrong for everyone. And you can't go to another God for another moral standard. When anything else is worshipped, bad things result. Let's look at love, for example, and I think this was a very good example for this one. Love is a beautiful sentiment, but love too can lead to evil. In the 20th century, people who put love of their country above love of God and goodness often committed terrible evil. Here is another example. Imagine that the pet that you love and a stranger, a person who you do not know, and therefore you could not possibly love, are drowning. The two of them are drowning. Do you first try to save your pet or the stranger? I found that tough one. Because quite frankly, you tend to go for the pet. That's the one you love. Well, if love is an end in itself, you save your pet. But if you hold human life as a higher value than love, you won't follow love. You will follow what God commands you to do so, and that is save the stranger, although you do not know him. Let's talk about education. There is no question education is a wonderful thing. I'm one of the most defendants of education myself. However, education divorced from God and goodness can lead, and has often lead, to evil. Many of the best educated people in Germany supported the Nazis. And almost all of the Western world supporters of the genocide regimes of Stalin in the Soviet Union and Mao in China were highly educated. There is nothing, and I can be truthful to this, about a PhD, about a doctorate degree, that guarantees a person will be wiser, kinder, or more ethical than someone with only a high school education. A PhD does not make you any wiser. The third commandment is the most commonly translated as, do not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. For the Lord will not hold guiltless. Meaning, the Lord will not forgive someone who takes his name in vain. Whoever takes his name in vain, most people understandably think that this command forbids saying God's names for no good reason. However, this interpretation falls short. I think there's more to that. That will mean that whereas God could forgive the violation of any other commandment, murder, dishonoring our parents, stealing, adultery, or even committing murder, he will not forgive someone who says, for example, God, did I have a rough day at work today? Thus, I think there is more here on this part. I'm not saying that we should be using God's name in vain or that for no reason. But there's more to it. The Hebrew original doesn't say do not take. It says do not carry. Not carry the one in the back. It's carry the other thing. The Hebrew literally reads, do not carry the name of the Lord thy God in vain. The New International Version uses the word misuse rather than the word take. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. There appears to be much closer to the original, that translation. What does it mean to carry or misuse God's name? It means committing evil in God's name. And that God will not forgive. Committing evil in God's name, and that God will not forgive. Makes much more sense to me. But again, I said we should not use God's name for no reason. We should restrain ourselves from doing that. Now, why not? And here's the reason. When an irreligious person commits evil, whatever that evil is, it doesn't bring God and religion into opprobrium. But when a religious person commits evil, especially in God's name, they are not only committing evil, they are doing a terrible damage to the name of God. They're actually making damage to his reputation. They are damaging God's reputation. Think about this. The most frequent argument against God and religion concerns what? Evil committed in God's name. Whether it is done in the name of Allah, and I think we're very familiar with that one, but we should be familiar also with another one. Allah is today. Or what was done in the past in the name of Christ. Have you ever heard of the Crusades in the middle century? It was done on Christ. We examined the fourth commandment last time, so we're not going to touch that one today. Let's jump immediately to the fifth one. The commandment reads, "Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you." I have always interpreted, and I think we'll have always interpreted in the church, this last part of the fifth commandment, that that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You have always interpreted that part as a promise. You honor your father and your mother, and God promised you that you have a longer life, or at least more satisfying life. But according to Mr. Prager, it is not a promise. It's basically a reason that why we should do this. And that put things a little bit on another perspective that I actually liked, without giving up the other one. If you build a society in which children honor their parents, your society will long survive. The lesson is, a society in which children do not honor their parents is doomed to self-destruction. That seems to be, quite frankly, a very good point if we look at what's happening in the United States today with some kids. In our time, this connection between honoring parents and maintaining civilization is not widely recognized. On the contrary, many of the best educated parents, people with PhD in education of children, in parenting rearing, do not believe that their children need to show them honor. Since honoring implies an authority figure, and that is a status many modern parents reject. And this rejection is not from parents that have no education. This philosophy comes from people highly educated, many with a doctorate degree. In addition, many parents seek to be loved, not honored, by their children. Yet, neither the Ten Commandments nor the Bible elsewhere commands us to love our parents. It's to honor them. This is particularly striking, and I found it striking, that given that the Bible does command us to love our neighbor, command us to love God, and commands us to love a stranger, but it commands us to honor our parents. The Bible demands that we show honor to our parents, and it makes this demand only with regards to parents. The Bible commands us to honor our parents, not the teacher at school, not the king, not the president of the state, not the priest, not the minister, or anybody else but our parents. Thus, why is honoring our parents so important? Why do the Ten Commandments believe that society could not survive if this commandment is widely violated? One reason is that we, as children, or as a child, me, we need it. We all need it. A father and a mother who are honored and who are not honored are essentially adult peers of their children. I had a sermon about peer pressure the other day at school, peer violence, and that's why many many children become violent with their parents because the parent is not a figure of honor. It's basically a peer. Okay. They are no parents. Scientific research has widely shown that fatherless boys are far more likely to grow up and commit violent crimes, mistreat women, and act out against society in every other way. That's typical of fatherless boys. On the other hand, typical of fatherless girls, those girls who do not have a father to honor, and hopefully to love as well, are more likely to seek the wrong man and are more promiscuous from early ages. Second, honoring parents is how nearly all of us come to recognize from the very early ages of our life that there is a moral authority above us to whom we are morally accountable, which makes life easier at work. And without this, we cannot create or maintain a moral society. And I believe many times we have problems at work because there's that someone that really doesn't want to obey authority. Of course, for the Ten Commandments, the ultimate moral authority is God, who is, from a higher perspective, our parent. And that's why we should honor him as well. Or that's another reason, not why. That's another reason why we should honor God. Thus, if we do not obey this commandment in particular, we're basically not honoring God. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychiatry and an atheist, theorized that an individual's attitude toward his or her father largely shaped the person's attitude towards God. I found that fascinating coming from an atheist. There is one more reason why honoring parents is fundamental to a good society. Honoring parents is the best medicine to tyranny or totalitarianism. One of the first things totalitarianism movements seeks to do is to break the child-parent bond. The child's loyalty is shifted from the parent to the state. Even in democratic societies, the larger the state becomes, the more the state it tries to appropriate the parental role. And you may see it sometimes when you go to an appointment with your kid at a certain age where you still think your kid needs you there. And many times, and I've said this because I have lived it, they want your child who is under 18 to make the decision. We want to talk to him. And we want to be, as parents, there because we have that responsibility as parents. Yet the society is trying to shift all the time the loyalty to the state, to the society instead of the parent. Finally, there are many ways to honor parents. The general rule is this: they get special treatment. Simple as that. They get special treatment. Parents are unique, so they must be treated in a unique way. You don't talk to them in a quite the same way you do to anyone else. For example, you might use bad language, and I'm not condoning bad language here, but you might use bad language when speaking to a friend. But you do not use that same bad language when you talk to your parents. You're a little bit more careful. You're more careful, I would say. You don't call them by their first name. This could be a little bit of cultural, but in general, you should not call them by the first name. And when you leave their home and make your own, you maintain contact with them. And I have to be frank here, I have learned this more from my wife than from my own experience. My wife actually calls her mother and her father, and she talks to her every week. Sometimes a week goes by, and my wife tells, did you talk to your mom this week? Let me call. And sometimes I call and their Skype is down. So the full week goes on and we can't talk. So I have to thank my wife for that. Having no contact with parent is the opposite of honoring them. Interesting. Let's keep this in mind. If our children see us honoring our parents, no matter how difficult it may sometimes be, because we might be frustrated with them, the chances are far greater than that our kids will honor us if we actually honor our parents. So it makes our life easier, or it makes their life easier as well. It's setting the good example. Let's go on to the 6th commandment. In my opinion, this is the one that needs the least explaining, so I'm not going to devote too much time on it. It reads, "Thou shalt not murder." Notice that the Bible does command the death penalty for murders and allows killing in war. Regarding capital punishment, the only law that appears in the Bible is that murderers be put to death. There is also something that is called moral killing, most obviously done in self-defense against an aggressor. And there is an immoral killing. That immoral killing is called murdering. The word for immoral killing is murder. The 10 Commandments are portrayed on 2 tables. If you've seen, there's always in the movies, they portray 2 tables, 5 here and 5 on the other side. Guess who's at the top of the other 5 on the second table? The 5th commandment on the second table all concern our treatment of fellow human beings. The first on the list is do not murder. Why? Because murder is the worst act a person can commit. The other 4 commandments prohibiting stealing, adultery, giving false testimony, and coveting are all serious. But murder leads the least because deliberately taking the life of an innocent person is the most terrible thing we can do. Let's jump now to the 7th commandment. It reads, short one, very short, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." Why is adultery prohibited? Why is adultery prohibited? There are many. One reason is because adultery threatens the very building block of civilization. What is that? The family. According to God, a family is defined as a married father and a mother and their children. Nothing else meets the definition of marriage or family in the Bible. A mother, a father, male and female, and their kids, as much as they want to have. Anything that threatens the family unit is prohibited in the Bible. Anything. If you look at the whole commandments, you can see that they are all seeking peace or a good harmony in the family. Adultery is one example. Not honoring one's father and mother is actually another example. Incest would be a third example. Everything that threatens the family is prohibited in the Bible. But why is family so important then? For many reasons. Here are some scientific reasons we have found why family is important. First, without the family, social stability is impossible. It's amazing, but social stability and that's what scientists have come to reach. Social stability is impossible without family. Without the family, passing society values from one generation to another one is also impossible. Family is important because, look at this, you guys, and I think I have to testify on this one, that is right. Because commitment to a wife and children makes men more responsible and mature. I have to say that I think a little bit more on making my decisions today that I'm married than when I was not married. Who cares? If I have to eat a hamburger. I have to resign to this work that I don't like. I'll find another one. I'm a little bit more careful nowadays. More than anything else, and this is for women, family meets most women's deepest emotional and material needs. The material needs that a woman has are met within the family. Because nothing comes close to family in giving children a stable childhood than a family. Children that are raised within family are secure and very stable children and very stable people. More importantly yet, all these is important, scientific research backed up by science. God is the creator of the concept of family. Families exist because God meant for families to flourish. Let's go to the other commandment. It's the 8th commandment. I think we will not have time. Have you ever thought that the 8th commandment, which reads, "Do not steal," is the one commandment that covers all the other commandments? That commandment by itself covers the other commandments. I started reading on it and I said, makes sense. Let's go for it. Read the other commandments and you will find that the violation of the other commandment can be wording as stealing, either from God or from a person. Let's go on it. Notice, murder is stealing of another person's life. Adultery is stealing of another person's spouse. Coveting is the desire to steal what belongs to another person. Giving false testimony is stealing justice. Working on the Sabbath is stealing God's time. And if you go on the other ones, you will find that you can word any other commandment as stealing, either from God or from another person. This commandment is unique in another way that I've never thought about it. It's the only commandment that is completely open-ended. All the other commandments are very specific. Let's take, for example, the 5th commandment. This one states that it is our parents whom we should honor. Our parents, very specific. The 6th commandment, prohibiting murder, is about taking the life of an innocent human being. The 7th commandment, prohibiting adultery, is also specific to a married person. Two unmarried people cannot commit adultery. That's other thing. But the commandment against stealing does not even hint at what is it we are forbidden to steal. This means that we cannot take anything that belongs to another person. This concerns the many non-material things each person owns. From this perspective, reputation is in the picture. Dignity is in the picture. Trust is in the picture. And their intellectual property becomes also part of the picture. Let's quickly run from some of this. Let's go for a person's reputation. Stealing a person's good name, whether through denigration, slander, or gossip, is a particular destructive form of theft. Because unlike money or property, once a person's good name has been stolen, it can almost never be fully restored. Let's go for another something that is not tangible. The person's dignity, tangible in the sense of money. The act of stealing a person's dignity is known as humiliation. And humiliating a person, especially in public, can do permanent damage to what is perhaps the most precious thing any of us owns, our dignity. A person's trust. Stealing a person's trust is known as deceiving someone. In fact, in Hebrew, the term for tricking someone is, I'm going to try to pronounce this as close as possible, gnevat da'at. Gnevat da'at. Might be that one. Perhaps I pronounced something completely different. But anyway, which literally means stealing knowledge. One example is tricking people into buying something, as when a real estate agent omits telling a prospective purchaser all the flaws of the home in order to make a sale. That's stealing. Another example will be when someone deceives another person with insincere proclamations of love in order to obtain material or sexual favors. Another one, and last one on this part, a person's intellectual property. Stealing a person's word that we know as plagiarism. I have to repeat here again, the majority of this material come from the Danish Prager website. And once again, I am using it because I think it adds something to what we have traditionally known. Let's go for the 9th commandment. 9th commandment reads, "You shall not give false witness against your neighbor." This means two things. Do not lie when testifying in court, and do not lie, period. A society can survive a bad driver, drunk people, many other things, but it cannot survive contempt for truth, whether inside or outside a courtroom. How many relationships, friendships have been destroyed because someone was caught in a lie? In the case of a crime, that will be punishable by death. Therefore, the false witness was liable to put on this. I'm going to go back a little bit more because I forgot something here. The Bible was so inflexible on the subject of punishment, on this subject of lying, that the punishment imposed on a witness who gave false testimony was the same punishment that would have given to the accused had the false testimony been believed. So if someone gave a false testimony and that testimony had been believed, would have given the accused a death penalty? That person who gave the lie was put to death. That's how serious it was. In the case of a crime that was punishable by death, therefore the false witness was liable to be put to death. Both the great 12th century Jewish commentator Ibn Ezra and one of the most influential biblical scholars of the 20th century, Brevard Childs of Yale University, agreed that the commandment was about telling the truth generally. There are many important values in society, but truth is probably the most important. We want to be kind, but truth is the most important. In society, truth is even more important than being compassionate or being kind. Virtually all the great evils in society, such as African slavery and Nazism, has been based on lies. Notice, For instance, black slavery was made possible in large measure by the lie that blacks were naturally inferior to whites. That was the lie, and people bought it. The Holocaust, let's go for the Holocaust, was possible because tens of millions of people believed the lie that Jews were inherently inferior to the so-called Aryans, majority of Germany. Many interracial marriages suffered and still suffer in the United States because many people believe the lie that God prohibited interracial marriage. And there's clear examples that God actually prohibited that type of behavior of someone criticizing another person for being married within another race. I'm talking about Moses and her second wife. Mass evil is committed not because a vast number of people seeks to be cruel. People are not cruel by nature, but because they are fed lies that convince them that what is evil is actually good. And we know that the Bible says that in the end times they would call evil good and good bad. We must place telling the truth as a central value. That is important. This commandment is there to warn all of us that, with a very few exceptions, such as the immediate saving of an innocent life, no cause is more important than telling the truth. And I bring this one up because someone might say, well, Miriam gave a lie, or many of the Jewish nurses, I'm going to call them like that, lied when Pharaoh said that every male that was born from the Israelis was to be put to death. And they said, yeah, then there was a lie, but there was something else more on it. The Ten Commandments is the greatest list of instructions ever conceived for creating a good society. But a good society cannot be created or maintained if it is not based on truth. Let's reach to the 10th commandment and the last one. In the 10 commandments, commandments 6, 7, 8, and 9, are the ones that prohibits acts of evil, murder, adultery, stealing, and perjury. In other words, they legislate behavior. But the 10 commandments legislates something different: thought. Now, we have always said that the 10 commandments could be divided in two parts. One part, our relationship with God. That legislate our relationship with God. The other one legislate our behavior with our fellow man. I'm going to propose here that we divide it in there's another division. The other division is that we have 9 commandments that legislate behavior, and 1 commandment that legislate thought. Know that it reads, "Do not covet anything that belongs to others, no their spouse, their house, their servant, their animals, or any of their properties." The 10 commandments prohibit the things that lead to murder. This commandment prohibits the things that lead to murder, adultery, stealing, or perjury. Thus, the 10 commandments can be divided in 2 groups, as I said before: the 9 that legislate behavior and the 1 that legislate thought. In fact, of the 613 laws in the first 5 books of the Bible, called the Torah, or the Book of Moses, virtually none prohibits thought, except the 10th commandment. Why then does the Ten Commandments include a law that prohibits thought, because it is coveting that leads to evil. Or, to put it in another way, coveting is what leads violating the preceding 4 commandments, the ones against murder, adultery, stealing, or perjury. Think about this. Why do people do those things? Why do people commit murder? Why do people commit adultery? Why do people steal? Why do people make perjury? In most instances, it is because they covet something that belongs to another person. In order to understand why coveting is the one thought that is prohibited in the 10 Commandments, and the one that only thoughts prohibited in the entire Bible, we need to understand what coveting really means. To covet is much more than to want. The Hebrew verb lachmond, hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly, means to want to the point of seeking to take away and own something that belongs to another person. So I want it so much that I don't care. I'm going to steal it. I'm going to do whatever it takes, but I'm having it. That's when you covet. Note that there are 2 operative elements here. Seek to own and belongs to another person. To seek to own is not necessarily the bad thing, because if it's there and you want to own it, you can own it. Seeking to own does not mean envying. And that's, I think, where the problem is. Sometimes people say, I'm coveting because I kind of envy that, you have such a beautiful house, you have such a beautiful car. Uncontrolled envy can surely lead to bad things. And it can both be psychologically and emotionally destructive. However, it is coveting that almost inevitably leads to stealing, adultery, and sometimes even to murder. It is when you want and seek to gain possession of the specific house, car, spouse, or anything that belongs to the other that evil follows. We simply cannot allow ourselves to covet what belongs to our neighbor. Whatever belongs to another person must be regarded as untouchable, sacrosanct. We cannot seek to own anything that belongs to another person, because God knows only evil can come out of it. Let me ask, this is a very good question for you, and I know the answer that you were going to give me. Did Satan covet God's authority? Inevitably, he must have coveted God's authority to go and possess it and get to the point that I am going to be the authority. So it's a very bad thing. Thus, for us all to live in peace, to live in harmony, and to reach that agape love for each other, we must abide to the standards set forth in the 10 Commandments. But quite frankly, the 10 Commandments are not, the way they are written in the Old Testament, are not enough. We know that God came, Jesus Christ came to earth to expand those 10 Commandments. So while in the commandment of adultery, or coveting perhaps of adultery, lust with a neighbor's wife was not considered as such as a sin, when you read the New Testament, you find that lusting with another person's wife or spouse in general is a sin. If we do not regard each one of these commandments with the same regard, we will have what is called a broken window. And if this broken window is not repaired with due diligence, spiritual vandalism will assault us. We cannot allow broken windows in our life or in our church. God bless.